All right. I always forget how to turn this transcript off. All right. Okay. So basically today, this is going to give you an overview of Civil 3D 2020. Basically, the target field staff is the target audience. And after completing this workshop or webinar, you should be able to understand the user interface, understanding the drawing navigation, a little bit about model space, paper space, and page layouts, and then basically going through the ability to navigate through different AutoCAD options. So this is just, like I said, agenda, and these are, I'll try to stick to them as best as possible, but this going from 9 to 9:30 is just a user interface. 9:30 to 10, drawing navigation, and then we'll have a break from 10 to 10:10. And then 10:10 to 11, we'll go over to model space, paper space, layouts, and viewports. And then 11 to 11:30, we'll go over the AutoCAD options. And then 11:30 to whenever, kind of open it up to Q&A. And like I said, if you have questions, throughout the presentation, feel free just to go ahead and, speak up. It's just easier than me trying to, look at the chat for myself anyway. So topics covered, again, user interface, drawing navigation, model space, paper space, layouts, and viewports, and AutoCAD options. So this is kind of like the user interface portion of the training. So here's the different topics that I'm kind of go over in Civil 3D. We have the ribbon, some tool palettes, command line, AutoCAD taskbar, dynamic input, the tooltips, coordinate tracker, quick access toolbar, transparent commands, model space viewports. And most of this stuff are all in the training packet that I did, send along with you to this training. So you guys should have received that. But I'm going to open up Civil 3D now and just kind of go over some of these different user interfaces. And you can follow along with that document, because basically that's what I'm going to do, is just go over the different topics to cover. So the ribbon, tabs, and panels. Basically, the ribbon is composed of a series of tabs which are organized into panels that contain many of the tools and controls available in toolbars. They're organized in the logical groupings. So it does have, palettes within those groupings and the tools necessary to create or modify your drawing. It could be docked horizontally, vertically, or undocked and floating, and maybe placed on another screen if you wish. But for the most part, everybody kind of keeps it just on the top of their screen. So at the top here, you'll see, and some people like this, some people don't. You can change whatever style you like on this, but these are just the tabs that are associated through this. And if you wanted to change that, you can, select these and you can cycle through them all. That's kind of like the best thing for that. But you can minimize them just to tabs, panel titles, or just the actual buttons themselves. But for the most part, this is the most common, I guess, look that most people see. And then once you have the tabs up top, this is considered the actual, panel that you're talking about. This is the actual panel here, and then you have a little down arrow that might have additional, launchers, I guess, is what they call it, like a box launcher, dialog launch box, and that basically, gives you some more functions within that ribbon. And you can control which ribbon, tabs, and panels are displayed by right-clicking on the ribbon and click or clear the names of tabs or panels listed on the shortcut menu. So, you can select, which ones you want to see or don't want to see on your palette groups. Um, and also, if you notice up here in the menu, you'll actually have different tabs again. But if you go into your CUI, you can also adjust that, where if you don't want to see something specifically in there, you can go to your CUI and change that also. And you can actually take an actual, ribbon itself, click and drag it, and you can drag it off of the actual, panel itself, and it could be a floating tab. Um, and on the right, you can toggle the orientation, so how you want it to look. And then this here just returns it back to the ribbon. So if there are specific ones that you use on a regular basis, you could pull that down and just have it sitting there. If you were doing alignments or something like that, you can have that sitting there. So this here, once you select, so these are considered slide out panels. So there's additional functions within that panel itself, within that ribbon panel itself. Now, if you want to see those and keep them there all the time, there's a little push pin on the bottom left-hand corner, and you can just select that, and that'll pin that so it won't go away. Now, it will go away once you leave that. So in this case, I pinned it, go to insert and go back. And then it's only when you're actually in that specific ribbon itself. Contextual ribbons. So this is, I guess, the really nice function with Civil 3D, that when you have a function, for example, if we were to do mtext, and I select mtext, you'll notice that there's a contextual ribbon that comes up here. So anything that, once I start writing in this mtext, I can adjust that. So I can change my styles here, whatever style I want. If I want to change the size, if I want to mask it. Again, you have the pull down for formatting. If you want to make it oblique, paragraph. And then this here, if you hit this, you'll actually get another window that will pop out that you can even do more things within that ribbon. So if you wanted to indent and set up specific parameters to that multi-line text box, you can do that here. Some people, like the default is dynamic columns. So if you'll see sometimes, if you're writing all of a sudden mtext and then it like kind of skips, or you see text in two separate columns, just double check on the columns and make sure that you have no columns set. Symbols. So there's a lot of things once you select or start that command. B hatch is another one. So if I typed in B hatch and I wanted to hatch something, you'll see you could pick points or boundaries or how you want to do it, the patterns. So this is one thing that you want to make sure, when you do a B hatch and you select an area to hatch and you're like, oh, I don't even see that. Well, double check to make sure you're on the correct layer. That's really the main problem that I see, that, if you do an actual B hatch and you don't see it right away, you have a layer that's selected that's not on. So the next one is tool palettes. If you come to the left-hand side here, again, this is in your ribbons. Under palettes, you can select that. And if you just hover over top of each one of these, it'll kind of give you what the actual icon is. And then it gives you a shortcut. So for Design Center, if I want that shown, I can select that or unselect it, or I can hit Control+2. For palettes, the same thing. You'll notice here, which is up here actually. So tool palettes, if I want to turn it on or off, you'll notice mine's on the right hand side the way it's set up. And you'll notice on mine, I have icons. So if you right click on that, you could do text or icons. So you can change that back and forth just so it doesn't, I don't know. If I do text, it shows what it actually is compared to icons, which I know I'm just used to the icons. That's all. But it's all preference. So in this case, we have the tool palette shown here. And it's with anything, you have your auto hide. You can go to your settings here. You can dock it, anchor it, move it. This is all your different palettes that you have available. So if I went to the NRCS palettes here, something that's simple, let's see, we'll go text and dim. So if we wanted to do multi-line text, so it just gives that function. It automatically puts it on a specific layer. So if you right click on this and you go to properties, it's just the mtext command, and then it's put on the to.text.title layer. Now, if you do use these Autodesk ones out of the box, we don't have those layers set up that way, so it's a little bit different. So it's going to create those layers. So just keep that in mind that, our templates are set up with specific layers that we made up originally. But once you add something, so for example, if I were to do that, let's see, PS means paper space. So let's do a multi-leader, one text note. I don't think we have a ones dim layer. Let's see. So we don't have a ones dim layer. So if I were to do a multi-leader in model space, or actually a linear dimension, one's dim layer. So if I want to dimension something in model space, you'll notice that it puts it on that one.dims layer. Automatically, it puts it in your layer list. I just recommend, if you want to go through them, most certainly take a look at them. There's multiple, tool palettes that are out there. The 11 by 17 and the 22 by 34, the main NRCS ones. I am in the process of trying to come up, with our own palettes for NRCS users. And it would be only useful for people that are on the shared drive, unfortunately. But I haven't figured out, how to do that yet. I can get it to work for myself, but I just haven't got to trying to sync everything through SharePoint so everybody has access to them. So tool palettes are, they're very useful. There's some quick, things in there that you can use. And the way that's set up is, going through that basic, functions of setting it up in, the video for just the NRCS customization tells you where the tool palettes are. Command line, as you notice here, there's a couple different things on the command line that you could see, and everybody's different. If you can drag it and put it where you want. You can customize it. You could do the input settings. You could do transparency. So if you wanted to adjust the transparency, you can. When you roll over it, what the capacity is, if it's solid. So if you want to change that, you can. The little box here is just your recent commands. So you can, go back to those recent commands and delete them or re-execute them. So if you did a multi-text and you didn't feel like, typing that in, you can, go back to that specific command and it's there. On the left-hand side, drag and drop, and you'll notice that it gives you an option to dock that on the actual bottom of your screen. Some people like it at the top, some people like it, wherever they want it. It's all, like I said, user preferences. Now, if you hit the customize again, you'll see you get a little bit different menu options when it's not docked. So if you select this wrench and options, it's going to take you to the same place if you actually typed in options on the actual command line, or if you had dynamic input turned on, it would actually show you the same, it'll take you to the same place. So that's just a little wrench down here, options, just another way to get to your options. Tooltips, once you hover over top of it, that's a tooltip. It's saying it's a polyline, what the color is, the layer, the line type, and if it's by layer. You can go into CUI, which is your customized user interface. And if you go down to your rollover tooltips, this will give you what you want to have shown. So general would be color, layer, line type. You can get in if you want to have line type scale, the plot style, line weight. So if I go to alignment, it should be giving me my style and my name and what layer it's on. But if you wanted to have more of that information, you can go to that. Same with Kogo points. If you hovered over it, you can select what you actually want to have shown. And that's just under the rollover tooltips. So you can adjust that. Hover over your surface. It'll tell you, what your surface is, what the name, style, and again, you can change all these settings to what you want to, have shown. The quick access toolbar, which is up top here. If you, sometimes you'll add these and, we'll go later in the training that, you can export all this as an ARG file. So it's your own profile that you can load. But this is just, generic stuff that you can add. But if at the end of it, you'll see if there was nothing there, you would just have this little down arrow. And if you select that down arrow, these are the ones that you could select to have in that customized, workspace, quick access bar. So it's just something quick where you can go to, where the save button, the open, the Q new, this is your undo. So if you wanted to have a redo on there, you can, have your redo on there. You can have properties up there. So, you can automatically select your properties. And then, instead of going over to this side, if it's easier to go up top, then you can have that shown. Again, it's all in, what you as the user want to set up and what's most comfortable in what you see on the screen. Transparent commands. So transparent commands have been around forever. I like using them. And you'll notice I have it on right now just for today's lesson. But most of the time I don't have that on. If you just go to your view tab and then go to toolbars, and then if you go to the civil transparent commands, you can turn that on and off. So toolbars, civil, transparent commands, toolbar on and off. And again, it's like anything else, you can go in and, start your command, and then, you can go over here and, use these, just like you would with a normal toolbar. Civil 3D, they got smart with it and said, a lot of people use these, so we're going to go ahead and make a ribbon out of that. So why this isn't really necessary anymore, unless you like toolbars, they made a specific ribbon just for the transparent commands. So a transparent command means that you have to start a command first in order to get into the transparent command. So in other words, if I wanted to put points, on this specific profile, I would have to type in, PL, start a command, polyline, and then what I can do, I can say, station elevation. And if I hover over top of this, it'll say profile station elevation, specifies a profile point location by specifying a station and elevation. Specify the value within the profile view, either graphically or numerically. So now it's asking me specify a start point, but I want to do the station elevation. So if I select that, you'll see it gives me, it prompts me for something else. So you always got to keep an eye out. If you have dynamic input on, which is this button down here, and we'll go over that again later, I would suggest having that on because it shows you right in front of where your cursor's at, compared to having it, you have to go down here and look at the command line. So select the profile view. Now it's asking me what station do I want to start. So if you had a specific station that you wanted to start at, you could just select it. Or if in this case, I'm just going to type 60. So you'll see it starts me at station 60. And, I could go up to an elevation if I wanted to and select that. Or if I go to, say, station 100, and then, I don't know, say I want my next station to be at, or elevation to be at 105, you'll notice that it's drawing my polyline from this station at 60, where I intersected it, to this station at 100, at this elevation that I gave it at 105. And again, you can continue on, drawing this within your profile. And, enter to complete your command that you've done. Another nice function with transparent commands that a lot of people don't realize, and it's very useful, is with your points. So you have point object, point number, point name. Again, if I wanted to draw a line for all my points, just say I want to do existing water, for example, and I wanted to draw that in here. The one way you could do it is go ahead into your point groups, go to your properties, and right now there's no display. So if I just wanted to display my existing water, so it's going to just display my existing water line. Now I can go ahead and all I did was isolate that. That's called lay ISO. That's just another command that's used. Now this here, again, if I was the designer and I just got back in and I took my survey shots, brought my points in, and I wanted to start labeling my edge of field, my water line, putting in break lines, things like that, this is a very useful tool, a transparent command for your points. The two that I use basically the most are the point objects and point numbers, because a lot of times point numbers work well if you're going in, going say point 100 to 150 and it's a straight line for a fence line. It's point 100 to 150. A lot of times it never happens that way. You go 100 and then, that might be the edge of the fence, and then 101 might be the edge of the crop field, and then 102 might be, center line of waterway, so on and so forth. You don't really go in line, directly. So the best way that I find this tool being useful is doing it by point object. So if I wanted to draw my water line in there, long as I have my of course, I layout ISO'd this, so I need to put in my existing order line. So you can just type EX and just go down to existing order, make sure that's turned on. So what we're going to do, I'm on my existing order line. And again, what do I need to do? I need to start that function before I do a transparent command. So I'd have to type PL, enter, specify start point. So I can specify my start point first, and then I can go to point object. So now it's saying, what point do you want to go to next? I can select that object and that object. And then I can just go right through all these objects as I go around, and it's drawing this line, right around this order line. And then hit enter, enter again, and it completes that line just by selecting those objects. It's just a quick way of, putting in lines, your line types. Again, if you wanted to, polyline, and you could say point number. So what point number do you want to start with? I want to start with point number 197. Then I want to go to 206, 209, 214. And then, I don't know, we'll go to 111 now. And then we'll go back to 197, enter, enter again, escape. And then you see it does a nice way of doing that. So transparent commands, I definitely would, kind of, look at those. They're very useful. That's just some of the ones that I've used on a regular basis. But there are other ones that you could, get into using, but they're the ones that I find that are most helpful in what we do anyway. And if there's anyone out there that uses different transparency commands that they feel as though that they'd like, most certainly, speak up and let me know. But that's, like I said, that's the ones that I like to use. Another nice function, and people that I probably helped out in doing some one-on-one trainings or troubleshooting with, will notice that I do some things with this model space viewports. So a model space, you can split the drawing into different areas, called model space viewports, and then you can have different views. So you'll notice viewport controls, and then you'll have top, and then 2D. There's this in canvas menu is what they call. So if I hit this minus button right now, if I go to viewport configuration list, it gives me options here. So I can have a single one. So currently I'm in a single viewport configuration. So I only have one model space viewport active. I could do 2 vertical, 2 horizontal. I can configure and select whatever I want. So if I wanted to, have one at 2D and the other one at 3D, I could do that. You can create actual name viewports that you use on a regular basis. So in this case, all I'm going to do is go hit the minus, viewport configuration. And if I wanted to do 2 horizontal, you'll notice that it splits it up. So you'll see the little blue going around. Okay. And then you can slide and make it bigger. So for example, whatever's blue is active, so I can zoom in. And if this is my alignment that I'm dealing with here, so this is the alignment, and I wanted to, see what that alignment did. If I changed it one way or the other, I can have that specific alignment shown here. Maybe I, want to make this a little bit smaller, zoom this in. And if I wanted to adjust this alignment, so if I wanted to move that PI this way, you can see it automatically adjusts that dynamically on there. Again, it adjusts it automatically. So sometimes it's really nice, if you're doing an alignment and you want to double check to make sure you have that alignment set to your liking, and it's representing what you want to represent correctly. It's always nice to have that, double view, if you will. But a lot of people don't realize that you could do that. You could do 3. I think maybe 3 is the max. Thought I had 4 in there. Yeah, so 4 equal. So you can have 4 equal ones if you wanted to. And you can adjust it just with that slider bar, whatever way you want to. So if you wanted to make this one real small, you could do that and make these larger. And then if you wanted this, what's that?
I really like that. I was one of the ones that was not aware.
Yeah.
Definitely using that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really nice to, see your drawing in, multiple model spaces. And even with that, like if, for example, if I wanted to show, I don't know, if I wanted to show this one in 3D, I can just hit the shift key with my mouse button. And now this is shown in 3D just in this specific model space. So if I wanted to say, okay, this is my pawn that I'm repairing, I could see that in 3D compared to what I'm looking at here. So it gives you a good representation of what you can and can't do within that drawing itself. So that's in a custom view, but it is a 3D view. So we're looking at that in 3D, and you can kind of, we'll go over the mouse button and how we move this stuff around, but you can zoom in, zoom out, and what it looks like compared to that surface. So after you get that done, this one is showing top. So if you hit top, again, you can do bottom, left, right. Same way with this. We'll go over that a little bit, but these are the same functions that are on this wheel here. But to maximize, to get back to that one viewport, just hit the plus key for whatever one you want to maximize, and then hit maximize viewport, and that'll basically clear everything out. And now you have your current viewport active. So that's all the stuff that we went over with the tool palettes, the command lines, tool tips, quick access bar, transparent commands. Like I said, just use them, get used to them. Model space viewports is what we just went over. The next section, I guess, is the drawing navigation. So we'll go a little bit over the mouse buttons, the named views, the setup of viewport, the change space, the zoom toolbar, the view cube, the navigation bar, and then the in-canvas controls, which we kind of went over a little bit. But so the first one, the mouse buttons. I'm sure everybody has their mouse set up the same way, but just don't know what actually happens. So the left button, mouse button, if you select it one time, just the one left click, that's a rectangular section area. Click and release. And then if you select again, another click and drag for selection, release one time, click and hold your left mouse button, and it's a lasso function. So it's only, going over what you're selecting. So whatever that lasso hits, it's going to select, compared to making a box, and it's only selecting those items. Compared to selecting this way, it's going to select all those items. So that's your left mouse button. right click. If you just right click your mouse button, you can do recent input. You can repeat the last command that you did. Or if you do recent input, it's going to show you all these same inputs that you've done, same as what you did here. So recent commands, it only gives you a certain amount, but if you right click on your mouse button, it'll give you all of them. I'm not sure if it gives you all of them, but it gives you a good amount of your recent commands. You can isolate objects. This is all your clipboard functions. You move, copy, rotate, erase, scale, bring the front, back, trim, extend. You have your pan, your zoom, free orbit. And then again, your options. So another way to get into your options, you can do that. And then once you do get into your options, you know, you can change that user preferences on your right click customization. So some people, and I've done this before where I've had users, call me and I would right click, and every time I would right click, it would just go to the enter. Like, what is going on? And it took me forever to figure this out, but you can actually turn on that right click for the enter key. So if you were to do the function, you can right click and that hits your enter. I don't recommend that, but if that's something that you want to do, you can. Um, if no objects are selected, right click means to repeat the last command. So it's all in what you want. Things are here for you to customize the way you want to do things. The mouse button. So before you can type ZE for zoom extents, or you can just type Z for zoom. And then you can do real time. You can do a scale factor. If you hit the down, you can do all, center, dynamic, extents, previous. Gives you all these different objects. So if I wanted to do a window, I just wanted to zoom to that, I could do that. But the nice thing about having a mouse wheel, if you just select your mouse wheel, like push it in, that gives you your pan function. So by pushing your mouse button down, that's your pan. And then just pulling your mouse button back towards you is zoom out, pushing it to you, zooms in. Now, I will tell you with GIS, it's just the opposite. When you push the mouse button away from you, you're zooming out and then pushing it.
That's an easy fix.
What's that?
That's an easy fix on GIS. Just hit options and then ArcMap options and then click the other box,
Mouse.
scroll in. It's
Yep.
super.
Yeah, it is. But out of the box, it's just the opposite of what we do with Civil 3D. But yes, you can fix it. And then I think that's it for the mouse wheel. Oh, the other one was, which I already kind of showed you, but if you wanted to do this, go into the 3D mode, if you hold your shift key and then your middle mouse button, and then it gives you in this free orbit, and now you're in 3D. And once you unselect your shift key, then you can zoom in, use your mouse key like you would be before as far as zooming, hit your shift key again, and then you can do that free orbit and then zoom in and out. And it just kind of gives you that, 3D look of what you have going on. And then again, this will tell you, what you see that you might have problems with when you are in Civil 3D, when you're in that Civil 3D location where this line is probably a break line that had missed, and it's probably sitting on some weird elevation. So it's always a good thing, to check that stuff and make sure, what you have drawn is correct, I guess. And again, come back up to here, restore viewport. Sorry. Maximize that. custom view, you just want to go to top. And then the other one is double click your zoom mouse wheel, or your double click your mouse wheel. And that's a good one to do. And that's just zoom extents. Any questions on the mouse? All right. Name views. Some people use this, some people don't. I use it when I get into complex drawings like ag waste and things like that, where I need to have like a name view where I want to refer back to. And even when I'm setting up my viewports, I can set up a viewport based off of my name view. So a name view is basically something that, you know, you go back to. So if you had all these profiles that were sitting over here, or cross sections, and you had 10 cross sections, you might want to have a name view for cross sections over here. And then you have a name view for your profile over here. So you're not just constantly panning back and forth. So it's very useful when you have multiple things within your drawing. So if you go to your view tab, you see unsaved view. I do have, I'm going to delete these views, but that's two that I'm going to make. So you have unsaved views. You can do top, bottom. This is just your generics. So if you go to your view manager, I deleted it, but I didn't apply it. All right. So, okay. So now you'll see I have none in there. So view manager, and I want to create a new view. We'll just call it plan view. Leave all this as defaults. If you don't have this selected, you won't see all that down there. You could do current display or define a window. I want to define a window on this, and I just want to show this is my plan view. That's all I want to show. Hit enter. Now, there's a couple other things in here that, you know, you can adjust. If you want to adjust your background, you can adjust your background to an, you know, image. If you had all your layers turned on, so think of it as a snapshot of what you have shown here. If you have all your layers turned on with your map turned on in the background, which I'll show you, it's going to save that view to that specific way. So if you had current views where if you're just doing, you know, want to show you just your points, you can have a name view, points only in plan view, and just have your points shown on there. And you can go to that, you know, name view, and it'll only show your points, and it won't have anything else on there. Or if you just want to have a name view that shows, you know, specific alignments or anything. I mean, you can get very creative with this, instead of, you know, turning layers on and off and things like that. But use them to what you will. I defined a window. I called it plan view. I click OK. So it kind of gives me a preview there. You can edit the boundaries. So if I, you know, wanted to edit and I, you know, wanted to make it a little smaller, I can. And then you hit apply. So that's my name view. It kind of gives you a preview there. Click OK. So now if I'm zoomed out in my drawing and I have no idea, somebody went in my drawing and I was, you know, I can't find any of my work. It's out in, you know, la la land. If I come into my unsaved view and now I go to my plan view, it automatically takes me right to that plan view of what I created. So any view that you want. So let's create a new plan view. We can say new and say we wanted to do profile of pipe. Define window. And here's my pipe profile shown here. Click enter, click OK, and I can click apply. And now if I want to do profile pipe, there's my profile pipe view. And then this is useful again if I wanted to do 2 vertical viewports. Now I can go to my viewport configuration here, and I could say, okay, well, I want my plan view over here, and on over here, I want my profile, my pipe over here. So you can use those views that way also. So it's just it's a quick way of, having everything set up. It does take some time and getting used to, but I'll say that in like complex plans and things like that, I will go into the name views and do that and have multiple plan views just for that reference. And when you set up viewports, the same thing, which we'll go over too. We'll go over, having that plan view in a viewport. So you can create a plan view and say this UCS on this, and we'll go over the UCS, and it was changed. I can create that same plan view if I wanted to turn this. So this actually is on the bottom. This water level is on the bottom horizontal x-axis. I can go into my plan view and make a viewport and select that plan view, and now that will turn in my viewport the way I want it to. So it's very useful in that aspect too. Any questions on that? All right. So viewports. Viewports are very tricky. And it's not shown on this sheet here on this page 22, but I'll go over it a little bit. This is just kind of, setting up a viewport. But I kind of go over what an actual viewport is a little bit later in the presentation. This is just kind of establishing a viewport orientation and copying it from paper space in the model space. So in other words, I had this viewport that I've created in my paper space, and I want to show this boundary in my model space. So there's a command called change space. Okay. And basically what you want to do, you want to create a line, and it doesn't matter what it's on. I would just recommend, you can put it on annotation, whatever you want to do. You can put it on 0 layer. It doesn't matter. Let's do border in this case. So I'm going to do a polyline. Have your object snap on, shift, right click, endpoint. And then if I wanted to go to the next endpoint, shift, right click, endpoint, shift, right click, endpoint, shift. Now this is a cumbersome way of doing it, and then hit C for close. So now I've created a border around what my viewport looks like. So I want to show that in my model space. So if you type in CHSPACE, change space, in paper space, I want to say, okay, I want to select that, hit enter, and now I've placed that in from paper space into model space. So now if I go back into model space, this is what my viewport looks like in that specific model space. So this is really useful. Like if, you wanted to put specific, again, I don't recommend putting any type of leaders or text or anything in model space. I try to put all that in paper space. But if you're a fan of putting it in model space, this will give you a good representation of, how that's set up. And even with that, if you were to do like a match line or something like that, you could do that. And then you can show, all right, well, how do I match these up? You can show your model spaces that way. So that's a really, cool function that actually I just learned not too long ago. Again, you know, it's what they call the change space. And again, now if I put my object snap on, and if I just typed in polyline, I can just select here and I can type rectang if I want to. Actually, we'll just type in rectang and I can start here and then I can just go down to this bottom right hand corner. It's a little bit quicker, and then change space command. Well, actually, I'll just right click and I can go into here, recent input, change space, select that object, hit enter, and again, it's placed that in model space. Does anybody use that?
Yeah, I just started using it recently, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice function. All right, let's see where we're at here. That's a change space. Zoom toolbar. So again, if you go to home and then you go into your view, and then if you go into your toolbars again, and then if you go all the way down to your civil, sorry, AutoCAD, you'll see a zoom toolbar. You can do it that way, zoom to window, zoom dynamic. It's the same thing. But if you like having toolbars, you can add that toolbar, you know, to, you know, up here if you wanted to. And again, the view tab, here's all your toolbars. And then if you don't see them, you just have to mouse down and then you can turn it on and off. Or if you had it here, you can right click. That's another way. That's how I normally do it, is I just right click in the toolbar space. Now, if you don't have any toolbars shown, you won't be able to get to that. So that's why you have to add a toolbar. So again, you can go down and you can see zoom in there too. The view cube. So these are just a couple different viewport tools. The UCS icon. Does anybody know what that stands for, UCS? User coordinate system. So it's what system that you're using. So however you want to set that up, X and Y. Right now, we're considered, with the X and Y, the way it's set up, what system do you think we're in right now? UCS system. No guesses? I know somebody has to know. All right. It's the world system. So when you have your X and Y shown like that, you're in the world. That's your default when you bring any drawing in. North is always facing up, and that's how it's brought the drawing in. Now, if you were to do a drawing that is not geo-referenced, even though your XY is shown this way, it's showing your north up, but technically you might not have your north showing up here, so you might have to change that. Which, you know, if you don't have GPS, you will have to change that to make north going up, or you just adjust it to, you know, change your north arrow to show where north is. But most drawings, you try to have the north facing up as much as possible. So that's your UCS icon, the view cube. So this is what this is. I don't really get into this too much. Sometimes I have it on, sometimes I don't. But it's kind of the same here. Like I was saying, like if I hit bottom, like it flips everything around. Like, and then if I hit top, it goes back to top. I can switch things, go in one direction, you know. So as you can see, what's changing, my UCS is changing. So right now, my UCS is changing. Okay. And then, if I hit this button, it's going to kind of go into this weird back. So it's looking at the back of it. And then we'll get back to the top. And then if I go home, and then the top, it'll get me back to where it should be. I don't use that too much. Maybe some people do, some people don't. And again, you can do a new UCS here, or you can just type UCS here and change that. But we'll go over that later. Navigation bar. I think they used to call this steering wheel at one point in time. I don't use this thing at all. To be honest, I don't know what half. I mean, this is a pan. This is the steering bar, I think. Steering wheel where you can walk across something, you can look around. I don't know. You can zoom, pivot point. So if you wanted to pivot somewhere, I don't know. I don't get too much into that. And then this is the orbit, where if you wanted to orbit around in that 3D mode. So that's kind of, the orbit mode is basically the same command as if you were to hit, if you were to hit the shift key and then the middle mouse button, that's basically the orbit. So you can kind of see the same icon up here for your orbit. So if I hit top, here, again, you'll see that same orbit. So you can see it there. So that's just another way of doing it. I do keep the view cube on. I don't know why. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'd like to make sure that I'm always looking down at the top, I guess. I don't know. That's the view cube. And then the navigation bar. We went over that. That was this here. And then the in-canvas controls. Again, you can restore the viewports, configuration. Went over these, the top, 2D wireframe if you want to do, conceptual, hidden, realistic, shaded. So if I want to do shaded, and then I hit my shift key, it'll shade stuff in so you can kind of see where my existing berm is compared to the green is where my proposed berm is, where I'm filling all this in. So it kind of gives you an idea that way. So you can pick shaded with edges, shades of gray. I don't know. Whatever you'd like to see. I mean, it's all preferences that you want to do. But they're there. They're called in-canvas controls. All right. It's 10:11, so why don't we take a 10-minute break and then come back here at 10:20, and then we'll finish up with the model space, paper space, layouts, viewports, and then the AutoCAD options, and then we'll go ahead with some Q&A. All right, I have 1021. I did see a question in the chat regarding the command. And the toolbar shows a north arrow and bar scale. We'll get into that, but basically you have to be in paper space. And here's where you would insert the north arrow. Here, there's different north arrows that you can add, and you can just add that north arrow wherever. If you wanted to add this north arrow, for example, select the viewport, and then click where you want that north arrow. And then you can scale it to whatever way you want to. And whatever layer you want it on. So that's how you select your north arrow. And I'll go over a pretty cool thing that I just figured out with the north arrow that I think everybody's going to really like. Scale bar, select the viewport, click OK. And then if you go in here, you can change that to 60, change that to 120. If you go to properties, you can do divisions in feet. And if you do 30, so you can change it that way to match it up. Hopefully that answers your question, Luke, as far as your entering scales. So that's where you would enter the scale. You would enter it based off of the viewport. It's not very common to add a scale in model space. I guess you could if you wanted to, which probably would be off of, you might be able to enter it that way off of your tool palettes. But the problem is right now I'm showing 1 to 20 and it doesn't change. So you would have to know what scale you're in that viewport and put it in model space, and it would just be in model space that way. So my recommendation is anytime you're messing with any of these, is that I would keep your scale in with the actual viewport that it's associated with. Now, all the templates had these viewports associated with them that are dynamic. So if I were to change this to 20 scale, and if I hit regen, you'll notice that these are fields. Anything with the gray behind them is considered a field. So it'll change that dynamically based off of what scale my viewport's at. And you can copy this viewport along with, you know, the scale. So if you just did a copy and you put that out here and you wanted to make a new viewport and unlock that, and now you wanted to change that back to 40 scale, you'll see that it changes it. It's associated with that specific viewport. So you can do it that way too. And that would be my recommendation. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. Hopefully that answers your question, Luke. Okay, so now we're going to get into model space, paper space, page setup, display to model and layout tabs, getting back into the UCS, the user coordinate system, the viewport setup, and this cool north arrow that I found out about. So we'll just go into Civil 3D again, using the same drawing. So basically you have model and paper space. That's the two working environments that you work in. Model space is where you work with all the objects in the drawing. By default, you start working basically in a 3D drawing area called the model space, you begin by deciding whether one unit represents 1 millimeter or centimeter, or 1 inch, 1 foot, or whatever unit is most convenient. And then you can then draw it at a 1-to-1 scale. So with that being said, if you go into your settings, one way to figure this out, and if you go to edit drawing settings, this will tell you currently right now I'm in drawing units feet, I'm in degrees, here's my projection, and then currently my scale is 1 inch equals 50. Now, if I wanted to change that to 1 inch equals to 20, you'll notice it'll change it down here. So that's just another place where you can change your scale. But that kind of gives you an idea of what your drawing settings are set to, and what everything, the templates are set to as far as the drawing settings are concerned. And then going back to paper space, so you have your model space tabs, and this is your paper space. This is where everything, where you complete your layouts, your title blocks, notes. Each layout you can create a viewport within that page setup, and different views of the model space. And then you can scale those model space views relative to your paper space. And again, if you're looking at this, if this was set up by 32 by 24, so this will be your 34 inches, and then this would be your 24 inches or 22 inches, 34 by 22 is your size of the actual paper. And this is just the margins that were set up default in the page setup. Now, if you go to options, display, if you do display paper shadow, that's kind of what that shows here. This is the paper shadow. I don't know why it didn't change it, because it display paper background. So this is the actual, again, if we were to take this and go across, this is kind of like my margins. It's not showing my actual paper. If I go back to my options and display paper background, this is actually my paper back. This is my paper. This is my margin set based off of that paper, so it won't go outside of that. So could we make these a little bit bigger? Yeah, we can make them a little bit bigger, but this was something that NRCS said, we went off of their templates on that. If you don't see your model and paper space down here, if you uncheck this, click apply, you won't see them. Sometimes, if your system shuts down or anything like that and you don't see them, always go into your options under your display tab and displayed layout and model tabs. And another cool thing, if you ever want to play a joke on somebody, not that I would say it's a good joke, but if you ever want to get rid of your command line, if you hit Control-9, it gets rid of your command line, and there's no way to get it back unless you actually hit the Control-9 key. So we went over to model paper space. So here's your model tabs. These are all your paper space tabs. And then if you wanted to add another one, you can. The way you do that, you can just hit the add tab and it creates this layout. Now you can set a current layout from that you already have set up. So if I wanted to select the index, it's going to be 22 by 34. I can hit that set current, click close. So it's going to show me that specific layout tab. It doesn't give me everything. That's if you're just doing a basic, new layout. The other option is you can right click on any one of these tabs and you can move or copy. So if I had the index and I just want to create a copy of that, I can move it to the end. And then you'll see an index 2. And it's the exact same as what this index shows too. It's just a mirror copy. So you could delete all this stuff out of here if you wanted to, whatever, and keep your title block that way. Now, if you didn't want to do it that way and you just wanted to bring in your title block, there's another way of doing that. So you can go from template. So if I wanted to do a new layout, right click from template, and say we want to do the 11 by 17, or yeah, we'll do the 8.5 by 11. Click open, and you'll notice layout 3. We'll delete this one. Layout 3, page setup manager, say 8.5 by 11. If I want to modify that, center the plot, I can preview it, and you'll notice that now I have an actual 8.5 by 11 sheet that I pulled from the template. And again, this gives you your, this is your actual 8.5 by 11. This is your margins shown on there. If you have something that you messed up within the page setup manager somehow, some way, for whatever reason, let's see. I don't know, maybe you did. So now I changed that setup a little bit different. And I really want it to be just like, my index. I want my index and all these page set up the same way. So if I go to sheet 4, I can right click, page setup manager. And if I select one that I want it to mimic, I can go ahead and select that specific layout that I have. So index, I can hit set current and hit close. And now it's brought it back to where it should be if I made that mistake. So that's a useful tool too. And then also in the page setup, I can't stress this enough, and I've just seen it a couple other drawings that I've seen. Make sure, write this down, put it in your brain. So unfortunately, when we do our templates in SharePoint, everybody can see that, right? Basically, what's happening is you'll notice down in this bottom right-hand corner, this is going outside of our title block. So I see a lot of drawings that when people publish their drawings, once this goes outside of your title block, this is not to scale anymore. So be very cautious in that. And the reason being why there's underscores in this, so this is treating this entire text as one string. So that's basically one word. And that's the only way SharePoint recognizes, things. And that's why we have to put that underscore in. It's for SharePoint purposes only. You as the user need to go in there, and when you go in a new drawing, for example, so if we were just to go in and we're just going to say new drawing, and it should take me to my templates, and I don't know, we'll just do the same one, click open. So you'll notice it automatically gives me the drawing 2 as a default name, so I can't overwrite that. But if I put that same name in there with all the underscores, it's going to keep that file name. So if I hit file save as with all the underscores, it's going to continue that. But if I put spaces in there, this does have a stacking ability where, it will stack the text on top of each other and stay within that specific title block. For everybody that's reviewing designs, make sure that you look at this and it is within that title block. Otherwise, if you're not getting the scale and checking, the actual scale of these things, they're all going to be off scale. And I see that on a lot of drawings that go through for review, that they're going outside that title block. And that's the first thing that should throw up a red flag. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing, there's no way around it, unfortunately, but the only way that I can think of people that are doing it when they're saving their drawing, they're probably saving it like, what we're showing, as our zip file sometimes, whereas you could do that, but just make sure that you have a space in there compared to having that underscore, because it's treating it as one string of text. Everybody understand that? All right, good. So just to kind of go over this a little bit, I know there's some new plotters that are being installed out there, particularly the T830. We've run into some problems with that as far as plotting. I think we came up with a solution on that. I was working with Nancy this week, and actually they've been working on trying to install our plotter that we've got. I bet you it was before Christmas, and they still have yet to get this thing hooked up. They're great plotters. You can scan to them. You can scan to a flash drive, and it even has the capabilities of doing email. But with that being said, how many people right now are able, or not even able, but have the 830 and plot to the 830 and are successful plotting it? Is anybody out there other than, I know Nancy? How about you, Zach? Do you have any? Are you using the 830? Are you still using the 520?
I was gonna say, I don't think I've used any of the newer plotters so far.
Are they there and not hooked up?
I think they're hooked up. The one in PG County got hooked up recently. I'm not sure exactly which model that is, though.
Yeah, I think that's the 830. That's the one that we got working, Nancy and I.
Okay.
How about you, Ron? Do you guys have any new ones down there?
Yeah, there's one in Dorchester and one in Wacomico at least, but I know Dorchester's is not hooked up yet, and Matt was having trouble with the one in Wacomico. I'm not sure if he got that working or not.
Okay. It seems like the same song and dance for these. So hopefully I can get this straightened out with IT, because somebody knows how to hook them up, and I don't understand why they can't communicate with each other to get this stuff working. But the problem that we're running into is, if you notice on here, this is actual server, and it has to be on the server to pick up all the plot sheet sizes. If it's not on the server, it won't allow that. So that's the key on that. And the other key is, all our drawings are set up as 22 by 34. And the reason being, if you look at all the private industry, it's 36 by 24, and the reason NRCS went down to 34 by 22, does anybody know why we did that? Why we made this god awful weird size? Any guesses?
Half scale 11 by 17.
That's one. And the other one is we can go ahead and put it in a folder. That's the key. If we go to that larger size, there's no way we can fit it in any of our folders. But that's the two reasons being half scale and trying to fit it in a folder. I know it does take some part on the user when we go to plot these out, that we have to do some, cutting, of the sheets, unfortunately. But that's really the main reason, is trying to fit that thing into an actual folder instead of having these larger documents. It would be much easier to do an ArcD, full bleed where we're maximizing that sheet. We'd have less sheets, but the pages are just so large, and once you go to fold them up, it just doesn't fit. And I don't know, Brian, in the private industry, how did you guys file all your stuff? I guess it was probably all in legal, document folders, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we had big folders, but honestly, like I always did my plans at 22 by 34.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, only because, well, a couple of reasons. One, a lot of times for the half scale plotting feature. And two, some of the agencies like State Highway, that was their required paper size, was 22 by 34.
Interesting.
Yep. And you can buy 34-inch paper too, so you don't have to trim and cut.
Even on the 36-inch plotters, you can use that 30. Yep. You can?
Sure. Yeah, you can put any size paper in it. You just have to tell it what size paper is in there, and it will plot accordingly.
Interesting. I didn't know that. See, I learn something new every day. So we're in the process of trying to get that 830 to work properly. And once you create your PDF, I mean, you're creating it as a 22 by 34. So it's just a matter of going in there and plotting it as a 22 by 34. I know the problem that Nancy ran into on hers is on the offset on centering the plot. We had to adjust the scaling on this, so it moved it up because it was cutting the bottom off. So once I get my plotter working, and if that's something that we have to adjust, then I'll let everyone know that we need to do that, or just set up a plot style that people can pull from in the template and use that plot style. One thing that you don't want to do is do this fit the paper. Once you hit that fit the paper, you'll notice that the scale goes off. So if it's not the scale, that's fine if you want to fit it, but just make sure you just keep that unchecked. The rest of this stuff, plot object line weights, plot transparency, plot with plot styles, and then the plot paper space last. I always have that checked as default. The one thing that I will tell you, if you are doing any type of as-builts, and I don't know, this might be something with a different engineers out there that require certain as-builts and how they're supposed to be done. But if you're doing it digitally, and I do have a training video on this, but if you have to uncheck the plot paper space last in order to do your as-built on top of your PDF. So that's the only time that, at least I've used that plot option unchecked, to have that plot paper space last. And then I get some phone calls regarding, I opened up the template, or I opened up a drawing and it shows all these colors. Either one, you don't have the CTB set, it'll have like an error on there saying that it's unavailable or something, or this is unchecked. So if I uncheck this, close this, well, it's only on that one, so let's go back to, well, we can do this one. And if I click OK, now you'll notice all the colors on there. So that's just something that, I feel as though it's nice to have that, defaulted set to actually what it's going to look like when you go to plot it. And of course, the CTB5, going over that before, just make sure that it's set up correctly. I don't think there's anything else on the page setup that I have to go over. The display and model tabs, I've kind of already went over that. Again, if you go into your options, you can turn those on and off by, selecting the display and layout model tabs there. Now, the fun stuff, the UCS. This gets people confused a little bit sometimes, but it's not as hard as what it really is. The biggest thing on UCS is that it's just a way of displaying your drawing. And like I said, when you have name views, you can name those views based off of that UCS. So currently we have a name view of our plan view that shows this, basically showing north. Okay, now I want to change that, and I want to have my UCS showing that, this is going to be my x-axis. So if I just went in there and just, drew an arbitrary polyline, couple ways to do this. I could do it by object. I can, follow the line. So I'll do follow by line first. So I'll just type in UCS, and it'll ask me for the first object. And then you'll notice the way the XY is showing. Do I want it shown that way? No, I want it shown this way. I want to twist it the other way. So repeat it. Start here, go here, hit enter. So that's my current UCS. And then I'm going to have to type in plan and then current UCS. And then now it's turned my UCS based off of what my current UCS is located. Now I can go to name views, new view. I can call this, plan view, south. Current display, click OK. So now I have a name view there. If I want to go back to my plan view, what's going to happen? You'll see it goes back to this. My UCS hasn't changed because I haven't gone back to world. So if I go to UCS, enter, go to type W for world, now my UCS changed back to world. Now if I go to my plan view south, my UCS changed back to this XY UCS. So that's one way of doing it. Now, if you want your UCS to follow, so I had to basically type in, plan, then enter, and then I had to hit current UCS and then hit enter again. If I want that not to work that way, I can do a follow. So if you type in your command line UCS follow, currently it's set to 0 is a default. If you hit 1, now if I draw a line, and I don't know, I want my UCS to go this way. Now I can type, I'm going to do object on this one. So I'm going to say UCS, and I'm going to say OB, well, UCS. And if you notice on here, there's a drop down. So specify origin of UCS, or there's a drop down. Or if you look down at the bottom, face, named, object, previous, view, world, XYZ, axis. So if I hit the drop down, I can go to OB or type in OB object. And if I select this, I can select this side, or I could select that side, but I'm going to select this side. So I want this to show this way now. If I hit that object, it automatically turns that because I had that follow UCS command set to 1 compared to 0. So it's going to follow whatever way I change my UCS, it's going to follow that. It's a user preference. You can keep it on. You don't have to. It just saves you a step of going, typing in plan and then current UCS and then enter. So it's totally up to you on how to do that. Any questions on the UCS? All right. So the joy about this is now we have, let me unlock this. Having those named views in there, again, we have a named view. So if we go, this is the unsafe. So this is what it would look like, due north. If we wanted to go to our plan view dam south, oh, because I have it locked, sorry. So if I wanted to change this view, so now it's changed that view to south. And then if I wanted to, go back to plan view, it's going to change it back. And then again, type UCS world. So you can change your UCS, any way you want to in this view. In the past, they used to have, I believe it was like D twist or D view or something, and it would twist the entire screen and it would just get everything all jacked up. So if you need to do any of this, twisting of anything, my recommendation is just, going back to the name views that you have here. And then that way in model space, you can, adjust any text you have in that viewport and change it that way. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Personally, that's what I would recommend doing. So viewport setup, I'm just going to kind of go in here under the PowerPoint because it kind of gives you, I think, the best representation. I actually pulled it from the help on this. So viewport setup, layout viewports are objects that display views of model space. You create, scale, and place them in paper space on a layout. On each layout, you can create one or more layout viewports. Each layout viewport is like a closed circuit TV monitor of a view of the model at a scale and orientation that you specify. So, as shown here, you have your model tab. Here's your layout tab. This is the viewport that you've created to a scaled view of this. So you're kind of looking through that almost like a TV monitor, as they explained. Does everybody understand that? I know that's very confusing, and a lot of people get the viewports, confused sometimes in scaling, but that's kind of what I showed you before when we took that change space and showed you actually where that viewport was showing. That's kind of your clipped TV monitor, if you will, that you're looking through in model space. And that's kind of what I was trying to represent here, that, you're looking through it that way. This is very important because this is where all your scales are set up. And this is how you set up your scales. If you have your scales incorrect on this, this is where I see most of the mistakes happen, where, someone will just go in here and create a viewport and not even set a scale. They'll just zoom in and make it fit that actual viewport because it fits on the page nice. But when you actually take a scale and try to, scale that viewport, it doesn't have a scale associated to it. So this is very important to understand. And this is probably the most difficult, at least it was for me, trying to figure out this viewport setup. Because when I initially started way back when, I used to draw everything in scale in model. And I'm like, well, how do you draw this to 1:20 and have my plan view at 1:40. I just couldn't figure it out. So I would just create a new page, and that would be 1:40. And the next page would be, 1:60 or whatever. Like, I never knew nothing about viewports. So I did a lot of this, by trial and error and, learning it myself. But once you learn them, it's very easy to do and look at. So if you don't understand, definitely just speak up, and I can go over it a little bit more. So when you create these viewports, I'll show you a couple of different ways of doing it. So this is just kind of, going over the setup and then modifying them. Once you have a viewport, set up, you have a scale grip, you have a move grip, and then these are the sizing, and then you select it, and then that's will give you all those grips. And because they are objects, you can move them, you can edit them, you can erase them, just like I showed you, kind of creating that, same viewport associated with that scale. So it's an object that you can move. This is probably the biggest thing that I see folks not do, is locking your viewports. Once you create that viewport and you have that scale set, lock that thing down. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll go in and you accidentally start zooming in, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, how do I get back out of here? Like, there's nothing. Like, I can't even hit the escape button. I don't know where I'm at. And then, they finally got smart and they made a paper space tab that you can hit paper space and it'll get you back out of there. But in the past, they never had that. You almost had to escape out of the function and hit the undo button to get back out that way, because they never had that paper space. But I'll go over that too. So again, if we wanted a viewport, we do have it set up in here that we have a viewport layer. So I'd recommend putting the viewport layer. And what that does on that specific layer, if you go into your into here, you'll notice it has a little no print on that viewport. So basically, it's not showing when you go to plot your drawing, it won't show that border around that viewport. So that's why you don't see it when you create that viewport. So there's multiple ways to do a viewport. The easiest one is just MV, and hit enter, and you can just start selecting a corner and then finish it. Okay. If you have a polyline and you wanted to go like this and hit close, it had some weird polyline. Now that's an object. So if I type MV, I can hit the down arrow. I can either make a polyline or I can hit an object. So I can hit this object, and now I've made that into a polyline. Or I can type MV again, hit the down arrow, and then it will create my polyline this way. Enter to complete your command line or command. So you don't have to be a rectangle. It can be any shape that you want it to be. And granted, again, this has grips on it. It's an object. You can move it whatever way. If you want to make it smaller, larger, if you wanted to trim it up, you can do that. And then this here, this little down arrow, this is where you set the scale. Way too big. And you'll notice this all looks funny at the start, but sometimes you hit the regen and it doesn't work. You come out, you go back in, and it fixes everything. Don't ask me why, but that's just an AutoCAD thing. So I know these are 10/20 scale. So we probably should set these to 20 because that's what they're set at. Again, get out of there, go back in, and you'll notice there's my scale on that viewport. And it's doing it to the extent. So it's scaling that viewport based off of what scale I'm using it at. Or the other thing is you can select this viewport. It has grips. Again, you can move this in, left, right, down, over. Now, currently I think I have F8 on. That's why it's doing that. But yeah. But if you don't have your object snap on, actually I created a triangle on this, so a rectangle on this, so it should just go with the rectangle. So you can make it as big, as small as you want. This here, you just move it wherever you want. So that's the other grip. Scale grip, move grip, and then again, if you wanted to create that viewport or copy it, you can go ahead and clipboard copy, and you can do Control C, Control V. Works the same way, and then it's going to copy it, and it's going to bring over the same scale that you have. So currently, you'll see it's custom 1:60, and so what's the main thing that I need to do on this scale? So once I have my viewport created, what's the most important thing that I need to do? Anybody? Nobody knows this? Come on.
Lock it.
Yep. Have to lock that scale. So you select that scale. This is your scale, what you actually have it set at. And then I always just come down here to the locked, and then it locks it that way. You can also right click, display lock, yes or no, or you can go into your properties, displayed lock. Where's it at? Here. Yes or no. So there's multiple ways to get to that and make sure that it's locked. But if I don't have this locked, let me unlock it real quick. So currently I'm in the model space. If I zoom in and then, I have no idea where I'm at, or the one thing that I see mostly happens if I'm in my model space. So here's my viewport, and my viewport's outside of my view, and I double click in there. Oh man, I'm in my viewport. How the heck do I get out of here? There's no lines that I can find my viewport right now. I can't get out of this thing. Oh, there's a model or paper space. Well, they never had that on there. You would always have to escape and undo. It was a pain to get out. So now they've created this paper space tab where you can zoom back out and change it to paper space. So I'd highly recommend to make sure that you have that paper space on. And that is one of the things that you have on here. I believe you can turn that on and off. So if you don't see that, make sure you have that on, because it'll get you out of trouble in more ways than one. And that's just on this hamburger here that you got to, these are other functions that are down at the bottom that you can add, and paper space is one of them. So if you don't have that on, make sure you have it on. It'll get you out of trouble plenty of times. Any questions on viewport setup? No? Okay, good. So everybody knows how to do viewports. All right. So let's see here. So this is a pretty cool one. This is the north arrow that I'm going to go over that I just discovered anyway. So I'm going to delete this north arrow out of here. And this is probably one of the coolest things. So north arrow. Once you're in paper space, again, you have layout. There's different, you can do a new layout, page setup, layout viewport. So again, you can go in there this way. You can clip it. You can lock it. So again, there's so many different ways of doing this. I'm just showing you the traditional ways that I'm comfortable with. You might be comfortable with doing it another way. I'm not saying this is the right way or the wrong way. It's just one way of doing it. Geolocation, again, you can turn those on and off. But the one we're going to concentrate on the layout tools. So the north arrow. So I want to insert a north arrow. And this north arrow that I'm going to insert is actually a dynamic north arrow that has been set up in the Civil 3D customization templates, and I'm going to start working them into our templates. So everything currently, the only where they're at right now is on the micro irrigation ones that I just uploaded. So they're dynamic. But what you do if you want to do it now, unfortunately, right now, the only way that state users are going to get it is get it off of the micro irrigation ones. If you guys want to grab them off of there. But for anyone on the federal system, you can just load custom arrow, block from current drawing. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to browse. So under program data, under CAD standard 2020, and this is in our in the handouts that you guys have. Yeah, I believe it's in there. Yes. And it's under templates. So right now it's only showing DWG, but we got to pull it from a DWT. So what you need to do is just hit the asterisk. If you ever want to find a file type that's not showing up, just hit the asterisk and DWT. And then right here, 22 by 34, click open. And then if you hover down to here, this D arrow, which is the 22 by 34, click OK. It's going to say select a viewport for the north arrow. I'm going to select this viewport and I'm going to select it there. Now this is the cool thing about this. And I'm probably more excited than anybody, but you select this arrow and basically what you can do, you can move this arrow whatever direction you want, and it's going to rotate your view that way. So I just think that's the coolest thing. Like, I mean, you're not doing anything. And if you come back out here to model space, it does nothing. It's only in that viewport. So it's kind of like changing your UCS almost. And it's automatically adjusting your north arrow. So you don't have to go in there and manually adjust your north arrow. You're basically moving your UCS through the north arrow. I mean, how cool is that? Like, I think that's so cool. To restore north, you can just go ahead and restore back to north. So now it goes back to where, it originally was. I don't know, Brian and Heath, I don't know if you guys had that dynamic north arrow in the private industry, but it's the first time that I've seen it. So that's the north arrow. We went through that. Now the AutoCAD options, we got the user profile, files tab, display tab, open and save, user preference, drafting tab, and selection tab. User profiles, basically everyone's used to this. This is how we get the NRCS ARG file that they've created. And the one nice thing, once you create your profile and you have everything set up, you can export, your profile and then make that your default. So if you'll notice in my Civil 3D, if I go to right click options, profile, if I want to use the Dan Civil 3D, I can set that current. And if there was anything different that I had set up, so you'll notice my transparency command came on. Or if I went back to my Civil 3D Imperial, they're not on. So every time, you make a profile or you change things, you can export that profile. So I had this exported so I can import it too. But wherever you have it, you can make that to wherever you want it. So for example, I have a Civil 3D light. I want to open that. So if I want to set that current, I made all this, and this was just for an example. So I just made everything that light color. So again, you go into your options and you can select any one that you want. And then that way, if you have something set up, we can bring that in to, the Civil 3D world. So once we get, Civil 3D 2022, are we going to be able to bring in, that ARG file? We should be able to. I don't see why we shouldn't. But we'll see when we cross that road. I'm hoping that it goes across the years of the Civil 3D platforms, because it's just a profile view, and now the only thing we might not get in, we might get the NRCS tab, but if they updated that NRCS tab, we might have to, bring in something else first and then create that and then export it. But it's not a huge deal, but you do have the options to go through that. And again, talking about the export profile, and then you can save it, and just save it to a folder where you if it's on the the OneDrive or not, however you want to do it. Let's see. Files tab. Basically what this is just talking about, where the automatic save file location is, where your printer support file path is, your template settings, tool palette file locations. That's really the four main ones that, you can concentrate on looking at, and just make sure that they're set up correctly. If you do have that automatic save file location, you'll see exactly where that's located. If, you did a drawing and, you had a backup and it automatically saved it, then you can go back there and look at that location and where it's at. Display, this basically, again, it's all user preferences. You'll notice on my crosshair size is very large, and that's just a preference of mine. Pretty much everything I leave, the same here, other than to display the paper background, and make sure I put the display layout and model tabs on there. That's probably the two biggest things. The other thing on this one is probably colors. When you do the colors, that takes you into like model space, and like if it's black, if you don't like black, that's like the default. You can change your colors that way. So we can show that. I could show you that real quick. So if you're in model space, this is kind of like a bluish haze, if you will. So options, display, again, colors. So you can do a uniform background, and these are all the different options that you can go into. So this is just a color that I chose at 33, 40, 48 for my background. Sheet layout. only reason I use white is just it's the page. I don't know. Block editor, if you wanted to use a different color for that, you could. So command line, if you want a different command line, you could do that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. And again, these are all just, you know, stuff that I'm going over that, you know, you had the capabilities of, you know, changing as a user. Open and save. The biggest thing on this one that I would, you know, make sure that is checked is that automatic save button. 10 minutes between saves. Is that a little extreme? Probably. But you know, you could do a lot of things in 10 minutes. If you want to change it to an hour, that's fine. Just keep in mind that, you know, when it creates a temporary file, it has that AC $ behind it. So that's, you know, an extension for a temporary file. And it also has a .bak file, which is a backup file. That is not your automatic save file. Well, actually it is, because it does create, if you have this check, create backup copy with each save. So what it's doing is creating a BAK file along with a temporary file associated with it. Now, if you're working in your drawing and, you know, it, for whatever reason, Civil 3D crashes, when it never crashes, right? And we try to get that back. The first time you open up Civil 3D, it's going to come into what they call a recovery mode. And I'd recommend going through that recovery mode to try to get your most recent copy. Otherwise, there's steps around that by going into your temporary file, renaming that ACS star, and, you know, putting .dwg behind it, and that would be your most recent copy. Or you can do that on your backup file sometimes, but most of the time it's just this AC money sign that you would change that to a DWG. So there are ways around, you know, if you didn't get that recovery splash screen come up when you tried to pull your drawing in, there are ways to get that drawing back. Because I know there are folks that, you know, work on it all day. They, for some reason, the automatic save wasn't on there. Unfortunately, if that is not on there, it's not checked, and it didn't save from the time you started in the morning to the time it crashed at the end, it will, in a recovery mode, pull that file and try to recover it. But if it's not been automatically saved, it's almost impossible to get that. So make sure that you have that automatic save set. Again, user preferences, kind of went over this a little bit. Insertion scale, you know, this is unitless. A lot of times when, you know, you have drawings from architects and things like that, they'll have that set to architectural, and you'll bring it in and the units are incorrect. So having everything set to unitless is much easier. Everything's like a 1-to-1 scale, if you will. So 1 inch equals 1 foot, you know, or, you know, 1 millimeter equals 1 millimeter, so on and so forth. Everything is 1-to-1 scale. You're not designating an actual scale that 1 inch equals 20 feet, 1 inch equals 40 feet. It's unitless. So you can bring in any type of scale into that drawing. And they're all set up in the templates that way. Drafting, you know, just some simple things in the drafting. I kind of use everything as default. I usually don't change anything on this. Selection, I don't usually change anything in the selection too much. Kind of keep all this, you know, the same. Things to know: if you have a question, ask. This is on all my slides. There's always multiple ways to do the same thing. Use the ones that work best for you. Keep in mind the goal of what you're using AutoCAD Civil 3D for. Use help sources. This program can be as simple or as complicated as you would like it to be. Spend time using the program, and whenever possible, with other people who use the program. Again, you know, no question is a dumb question. You know, feel free to contact me or any one of the CETs out there. This is kind of like this training today is kind of like the building blocks of Civil 3D and AutoCAD. I know there's a lot of newer folks that have been hired that have never even opened up Civil 3D. So this will probably be a good training for them to go, at least start out with trying to figure out how to do a viewport, how to, scale a viewport, and, just kind of going over the different functionalities, within Civil 3D itself, and just getting used to all the different buttons and tabs and things like that. There's a lot of things that, I don't go over everything. I mean, as simple as it sounds, I mean, there's a find command that you can hit find. And if you wanted to find a specific name or a number, and you can replace it with whatever you want. You can do the entire drawing or current layout, selected objects, and you can place it. And there's different things on that, match the case or whatever. You can replace with different layers. Find and replace is huge for doing things. Another big one is a spell command. If you just type in spell, you can do the entire drawing and hit start, and it's going to go to each one of these and either add it to the dictionary. You can ignore it, ignore all of them, and then it's going to go through that entire drawing. So people that have spelling mistakes shouldn't have spelling mistakes, technically speaking, if they use this command. So that's always a good one. Trying to think if there's anything else that I had to go over. I think that's pretty much it. Regarding, just kind of like the intro to, Civil 3D and some of the user interfaces, the navigation, the model space, the paper space, creating the layouts and the viewports, and just some of the AutoCAD options that are out there. I guess the biggest thing, with Civil 3D, it's a complex system, software, and we don't even touch half of the stuff that the program has. And I know there's a lot of computers out there that folks say, well, how do I, my computer keeps crashing, I do this and do that, and we're not even touching anything. And once we start to get into grading and things like that, more complex, I mean, if it's crashing when you're doing just minor things now, it's only going to get worse. But they are in the process. They did finally come out with a quote unquote computer recommendations, for technicians / planners and things like that. So hopefully the computers that moving forward that will be ordered will have the correct amount of RAM and processor speeds and things like that, where we're not crashing all the time, on the systems. But with that being said, Civil 3D will crash. I mean, it's just the type of program it is, unfortunately. So drawing coordinates, that's another one that you can look at. Geographic. So this is lat longe. So I mean, if you a soil boring or something that somebody gave you, you could put the lat longe in there, and then the absolute. Now this won't give you the actual Z. So if you go into tool palettes, you can find the coordinate tracker there. So existing ground. So the nice thing about that is it'll actually give you the X and Y and the Z value, compared to this doesn't give you the Z value on the coordinates. if you wanted to use that coordinate tracker. Any specific questions anybody has on anything? For anything? I mean, it doesn't even have to pertain to this specific training that I did today. It could be anything that you have that's burning that, you know, other people might benefit from. All right, well, that's all I have, and I appreciate your time. And any questions, let me know.